Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 129 based on novel. So let's start. Suddenly, Dragon Rearing Sovereign gave a flick and made Long Jianan tumble back a few times. She crashed to the ground, and only then did she notice that they had already descended. The two flood dragons under Dragon Rearing Sovereign's feet had brought them to Gold River. Are you the one who fed this dragon of the Qin breed until he got so plump? Dragon Rearing Sovereign lifted Qin Mu up in his palm and examined him up and down. He smiled and said, "You have fed him well. Not bad, I like you very much." When Qin Mu faced him, his heart shuddered. Dragon Rearing Sovereign was too huge, and just his face alone was much taller than Qin Mu's whole body. He was covered with dragon scales, and only his brow ridge that was raised was free of them. Instead, there were two eyebrows that were shaped like feathers. "Senior," Qin Mu gathered his courage and said, "I've learned the art of healing ever since I was young and my medical techniques are passable. I feed my dragon Qin half a bucket of scarlet fire spirit pills every day." Half a bucket of scarlet fire spirit pills. Dragon Rearing Sovereign chuckled. "Looks like your pill refinement technique is truly extraordinary, to actually refine so many spirit pills daily. How could a young Yuan with a child body like him need to eat half a bucket every day? All he needs is a bowl of scarlet fire spirit pills and that's enough." Qin Mu's face instantly turned black. Dragon Rearing Sovereign then added, "However, all the pills he ate were not wasted. They turned into dragon and Qin vitality, which are stored in his body. Once that power is activated, he will be able to cultivate his dragon bead and Qin fire, both of which are quite extraordinary. Only then could he be considered as just having become an adult. I see that even though you know how to refine pills, you don't know how to raise dragons. Are you willing to learn from me?" Disciple is willing to. Long Jianan was furious. The black-hearted scum was taking this opportunity to actually climb above her head to become a disciple of her founder. "I asked if you want to learn from me and not if you want to be my disciple. You are just a small boy." Dragon Rearing Sovereign smiled and said, "Don't be in a hurry to pay your respects, since I'm not taking in disciples. But as long as you serve my dragons well, it won't be impossible for me to take you in as my disciple in the future. Now, refine a furnace of scarlet fire spirit pills for me to take a look." Qin Mu immediately burst forth with vital qi and took out some herbs from his Daotai sack to refine the pills in midair. While Dragon Rearing Sovereign was talking, he finished refining one pill of scarlet fire spirit pills. Dragon Rearing Sovereign revealed an astonished expression, which turned into great delight. He laughed and said, "I'll take you in, it'll free me from numerous mundane tasks. From today onwards, you will be in charge of refining pills. I can then relax." He raised his leg to give the dragon Qin a kick and said, "Little thing, I shall teach you the technique to cultivate the dragon bead and the Qin fire, so you can help start the fire to refine the pills." The dragon Qin could finally stand. He was surprised and delighted. Qin Mu's mood swiftly lifted. Grandpa Def frequently said that each and every variety of studying is the highest thing to be sought, while Grandpa Apothecary's art of healing is useless. One might have to pay the patient until bankruptcy in case of misdiagnosis. In comparison, studying and painting can help you make a living anywhere. Yet in the end, Grandpa Def almost starved to death while selling his paintings on the streets, and Grandpa Apothecary's medical expertise make my life easy wherever I go. "Little girl, come over." Long Jianan lowered her head and walked forward so Dragon Rearing Sovereign could examine her up and down. He shook his head and said, "You also know some skills on how to raise a dragon, so you shall be his attendant and help me raise my dragons. Remember, don't slander him anymore, or I won't forgive you. Long Jianan was seething with anger, but had no choice other than to nod in agreement. Pleased with that, Qin Mu asked, "What is Dragon Sovereign doing here at Gold River?" "Searching for the main dragon's vein of eternal peace empire." An earring on Dragon Rearing Sovereign's ear swayed and slithered down, transforming into a yellow flood dragon. Its body became longer and longer when it slithered into the river with an aura that was growing more and more terrifying. The current of Gold River was rapid, and the moment the flood dragon swam in, it started to stir up havoc. The water instantly rose into the sky, creating a flowing river in the sky. This is where Gold River Dragon's abdomen lies, its claws are nearby as well. Dragon Rearing Sovereign looked at the bottom of the river, and revealed an expression of disappointment as he shook his head. This place isn't the main dragon's vein. Qin Mu also looked down at the bottom of the river and was slightly stunned. He saw that the current had actually washed out stones that looked like pieces of dragon scales. From their path, he could faintly see that they actually had the shape of claws. River has the river Qi, which will gather to form a dragon's vein, it will be water. When mountain Qi will gather to form a dragon's vein, it will be the land. If fire Qi like magma will gather to form a dragon's vein, it will be fire. These are the dragon's veins that people generally know. However, there's also a fourth kind of dragon's vein, which is wind. The wind blows tens of thousands of miles and carves out traces of a dragon among the mountains and land. Dragon Rearing Sovereign raised his head to look up and said in a low voice, "I have checked the wind veins and the mountain veins, Mud River and Gold River are also both checked. If I continue forward, I will have to check the 3 veins of the fire dragon that are underground. With Eternal Peace Empire having so many dragon's veins, I'm afraid a big dragon is coming. But if I take away the main dragon's vein, all the dragons will have no leader, and, Keek, the world will fall into utter chaos. Eternal Peace Empire is truly full of disasters. After the mutiny and rebel, there was the descent of a natural disaster, followed by the alliance of barbarian Di Empire and Wolfstore country to invade them. Now a dragon rearing sovereign hops out, who wants to take away the main dragon's vein. Qin Mu sighed ruefully in his heart. Emperor Yangfeng truly had a hard time being the emperor, pushing even him to clear up all the shit repeatedly. Sunshot divine cannon I forged could be used to kill this dragon rearing sovereign. Although the battery is still at the capital and Emperor Yangfeng is not here. Qin Mu was suddenly stunned. He had never been part of Eternal Peace Empire, so why did he have to risk his life for it? When he walked out of Great Ruins, it was for no other reason than to gain experience and improve. His goal hadn't been to protect Eternal Peace Empire, so when had his original intention changed without his awareness? Not so long ago, he had still viewed Eternal Peace Empire as an enemy for treating the people of Great Ruins as abandoned and good only to be slaves. When had his views changed and he began to treat Eternal Peace Empire's matters as his own? Wasn't what he was supposed to do to gain experience? Wasn't he supposed to fight for the survival of Great Ruins people? When had he then started to treat Eternal Peace Empire like his second home? Subconsciously treating its matters as his own. He looked deep into his heart and discovered the cruel and fascinating truth there. The complexity and changes of the human heart surpassed any reforms and changes in the paths, skills, and divine arts. Qin Mu reflected on his own heart, which was calm. As the human emperor, he wasn't doing things for Eternal Peace Empire, but for the people of that land. If Emperor Yangfeng was unkind and incompetent, he would have him replaced. If Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor failed in his reform, he would then take it from his hands and proceed with it himself. But even if Eternal Peace Empire's reform was good, if Emperor Yangfeng invaded Great Ruins and made the people of Great Ruins slaves, he would get rid of him. Qin Mu blinked and felt that this was pure and simple. We're here. The two dragons under Dragon Rearing Sovereign's feet suddenly paused and stopped in their tracks. Qin Mu looked around, slightly stunned. There were huge volcanoes everywhere, and thick smoke was billowing from their mouths. However, there wasn't any lava spurting out. Time and time again, Qi cultivators would come up to the mountain to gather underground fire, which was used for cultivating fire divine arts. This was Volcano County of Eternal Peace Empire, named for the numerous volcanoes in its territory. 90% of Eternal Peace Empire's volcanoes were gathered there. It also had the biggest volcano, which was called Great White Mountain. It was extremely high, and its peak was covered with snow while the mouth was bubbling with lava. Dragon Rearing Sovereign looked around, and his gaze landed on Great White Mountain. He smiled and said, "The dragon's eyes are there." The two dragons under his feet rose into the air, and he came to the peak of Great White Mountain. Located there was a sect who, unlike the three big sacred grounds of Eternal Peace Empire, had suffered from enormous pressure like the other sects. It had gone through a sharp drop in disciples due to the primary schools and colleges located everywhere. The sect at the peak of Great White Mountain was called Great White Sword Sect. Their population was sparse, and there were only 100 disciples on the mountain. Dragon Rearing Sovereign brought Qin Mu and Long Jianan, and descended directly on the mountain. He came to the hinterland of Great White Sword Sect, which was the entrance to the volcano. The experts of the sect were alarmed and flooded out like bees. When they saw Dragon Rearing Sovereign and a bunch of dragons, they were dumbstruck and didn't dare to move. A fire flood dragon under Dragon Rearing Sovereign flew out and tunneled into the volcano. After a moment, a passage was opened and multicolored light burst into the sky, turning it golden. Qin Mu looked inside the volcano and grew giddy. The interior of the volcano was actually not made of lava, but dragon scales that were shining in a radiant gold color. It stretched down from the inside the mountain, and went down all the way to the unknown depths. The people of Great White Sword Sect were also stunned. Great White Sword Sect had occupied that land for a few thousand years, yet they didn't know that there was another completely different world inside the volcano. However, they still didn't dare to move. Senior. The sect leader of Great White Sword Sect mustered his courage to go forward, but just as he was about to say a word, the huge dragons under Dragon Rearing Sovereign's feet carried him, Qin Mu and Long Jianan, into the volcano. Sect leader, those people barged into the forbidden ground of our sword sect, a middle-aged man shouted out. What do we do now? The face of the sect leader of Great White Sword Sect changed between dark and clear. He said, I recognized that youth just now, it's Heavenly Devil Cult Master. That old devil actually brought such a terrifying expert, who has actually raised so many dragons. The sacred ground of the Devil Path has a truly justified reputation, their foundation is indeed deep. Our Great White Sword Sect is not their opponent, so what can we do? Of course, we shall file a complaint to the Imperial Court. Everyone in the Sword Sect was stunned. File a complaint to the Imperial Court. Wouldn't this be too embarrassing? If we file a complaint to the Imperial Court, the Emperor and Imperial Preceptor won't ignore it. The sect leader rose and said, I shall head to the capital to file an Imperial appeal, and will definitely have the Emperor make Heavenly Devil Cult give us Great White Sword Sect an answer. In the volcano, Qin Mu and Long Jianan followed behind Dragon Rearing Sovereign, looking around at the spacious underground space. The walls were all made of radiant dragon scales. Qin Mu stretched out his hand to touch one and felt that it was scorching. It was akin to magma, but not it. Maybe this will be the main dragon's vein. The dragon chi that has gathered in this underground is about to transform into a divine dragon and fly away. Dragon Rearing Sovereign then added in astonishment, this dragon's vein seems to be slightly better than the 9 mountain veins in Eternal Peace capital city. Qin Mu asked curiously, Dragon Sovereign visited the 9 dragons' veins in the capital. What's the situation there? Even though Qin Mu had gone to the capital numerous times, he had never gone to see the mountain there. The capital was surrounded by 9 dragons, and the dragon qi there was thick and extraordinary. People living there usually had longer lifespans, and could cultivate twice as fast. Especially in Imperial College and the Imperial Palace. Those were the places in which the dragon qi was concentrated. The dragon's veins at Eternal Peace capital city are 9 yellow dragons. I went into the interior of the mountain, and saw that they had hollowed out the center of the mountain. They had already transformed into qi, which had scales and claws, dragon-rearing sovereign said. However, they are still qi and have not formed their bodies yet. Meanwhile, the fire dragon here is almost taking shape. Qin Mu was puzzled. Long Jianan touched the dragon scales and asked, "What founder means, is that the dragon scales of this dragon's vein are true dragon scales and not marks?" "Of course they are true dragon scales," dragon-rearing sovereign said. "Flood dragons are not considered true dragons. They are merely huge snakes that had absorbed the dragon qi and transformed. True dragons are born from qi and transformed from dragon's veins. All things in the world are born from egg or the womb, however, true dragons are born from qi. Qi gives birth to a true dragon, which then gives birth to eggs or fetus. You have been to Great Ruins, right? There are numerous ruins of dragon kings there. So why are there so many dragon kings in Great Ruins? It was all because back then, there were hundreds of dragons' veins, and their fate was prosperous, to the extent that they transformed into true dragons. Qin Mu's heart trembled. Hundreds of dragons' veins, prosperous fate, dragons' veins transforming into true dragons. He had indeed seen a Dragon King temple in the basin of East Sea. Not only that, there was also a Dragon King temple in Surging River, and even a temple for dragon kings such as Dragon King. Could those dragon kings had all been true dragons? True dragons transformed from the dragon's veins of Great Ruins surrendered and paid their allegiance to the dragon-rearing sovereign seemed to be afraid of the consequences of finishing his thought and didn't continue. Instead, he said, Eternal Peace Empire now is still considered small, with only 10 to 20 dragons' veins. However, in order to prevent trouble in the future, I have to find the main dragon's vein. Otherwise, if Eternal Peace Empire is allowed to continue growing, it might just be able to bring another calamity. Finding the main dragon's vein and killing it as soon as possible is thus the proper thing to do. They looked toward the depths and suddenly heard a dull roar of a dragon. Qin Mu's spirit was roused. Is this fire dragon's vein really going to transform into a true dragon? When he came to the front, only then did he notice the roar wasn't from a true dragon. Instead, it came from an underground magma river that was dozens of miles wide. The 4 walls around it were all covered with dragon scales that were shining a brilliant gold, dazzling their eyes. Qin Mu felt an extremely strong dragon qi. He had cultivated Ling family's 9 dragons monarch technique, and his attainments were quite high. So he immediately knew that the dragon qi here wouldn't lose that in the capital. There was the dragon qi of the 9 dragons' veins gathered together over there, while there was only a fire dragon's vein here, yet the dragon qi was just as strong. Could then this really be the place where the main dragon's vein of Eternal Peace Empire laid? Strange. Dragon-rearing sovereign frowned and examined the upstream and downstream of the magma river. Weird, the path of the dragon's vein here seems wrong. Dragon-rearing sovereign walked down from the backs of the 2 flood dragons. Qin Mu took a look at his legs and saw that they weren't human feet. Instead, they were 2 dragon claws. Dragon-rearing sovereign took out a small and delicate golden cauldron. Or it was so to him, but to Qin Mu, it was large enough to cook 2 or 3 humans without a problem. Dragon-rearing sovereign scooped out magma, with it before taking out some golden power to scatter it inside the cauldron. He then waited silently. Qin Mu went forward to take a look, and saw the golden powder fusing with magma, gradually changing. Dragon-rearing sovereign tossed him a golden book and a Daotai sack, while saying, "The dragon's vein here is weird. It doesn't seem to just be a simple dragon's vein. I want to cast a spell to investigate something the fishiness here. You shall refine a few furnaces of pills to feed the dragons. There are prescriptions in this book, so don't mess up." Qin Mu understood and took the golden book, which was called Dragon Rearing Scripture. He flipped through, noticing that it recorded all the methods for raising a dragon. It also listed all dragon types, their habits and properties, the methods to control them, and finally what each type of dragon ate. Qin Mu didn't care about the spirit pills recorded inside. What made him curious was the method to refine them. Apothecary had taught him numerous kinds of hand techniques to refine pills, yet there were many inside Dragon Rearing Scripture that he'd never seen before. As expected of the god who raises dragons, there are so many methods to refining pills. From the prescriptions and the methods for refining the pills, Dragon Rearing Sovereign's ability in the path of pill refinement might just be slightly weaker than mine. Qin Mu became alert in his heart. If he wanted to refine a deadly poison for Dragon Rearing Sovereign, it probably wouldn't be easy. He secretly banished that thought and continued to study the book. Dragons of different attributes consumed different spirit pills. For example, the dragon Qilin was a fire attribute, so scarlet fire spirit pills were very suitable for him. However, after Qin Mu checked, he found out that scarlet fire spirit wasn't the most suitable for the dragon Qilin. It was simply that its taste for him was the best. For a dragon Qilin, fire element divine vitality pill was the best. It could help them grow, increasing their sprinting speed drastically. However, divine vitality pill didn't have a nice taste as it was a little spicy. No wonder that glutton always wants to eat scarlet fire spirit pills, and even so many of them. Qin Mu's face turned dark, and he took a glance at the dragon Qilin, who was looking around curiously. With an unpleasant face, he said, "Maid, come over, help me refine pills." Long Jianan gritted her teeth and walked forward, wishing she could swallow him in one mouthful. Qin Mu kicked the dragon Qilin. "Fatty dragon, have you heard of fire element divine vitality pill?" "I've never heard of it before," the dragon Qilin said with some guilt. Qin Mu snorted and opened up Dragon Rearing Sovereign's Daotai sack. Inside it was all kinds of spirit herbs. Qin Mu differentiated them before throwing them to Long Jianan, asking her to take out the herbs according to the prescription. He then ordered the dragon Qilin to spew fire while he executed a pill refinement technique. He executed all kinds of hand techniques and dazzled people's eyes. Like that, he soon refined batches of spirit pills. The numerous small dragons on Dragon Rearing Sovereign's body smelled the fragrance, and immediately ran down his body to surround Qin Mu. The big ones were 3 yards long, while the smallest ones were not even an inch. There were dragons of all sizes, color, and even species raising their heads to look at him. Qin Mu's scalp started crawling. He didn't dare to move at all. Most of these dragons were flood dragons, but every single one of them was incomparably powerful. Getting rid of him would be extremely simple, and as easy as blowing off dust for them. Dragon Rearing Sovereign was currently casting a spell, and spewed out a mouthful of vital qi into the golden cauldron, causing the golden powder that was fusing with the magma to undergo a change. He said, "Place the spirit pills in the basin, they will eat by themselves." Qin Mu looked at Long Jianan, who immediately rummaged through the Daotai sack, and took out a huge basin. It had the diameter of 30 yards. So how was that still a basin? It was clearly a small pond. Qin Mu poured all the spirit pills into the basin, and dozens of dragons instantly pounced inside. They swam around in the spirit pills, frolicking and playing around. The dragon Qin could only look at Qin Mu impatiently, swishing his tail. Qin Mu took out a huge basin and poured in some scarlet fire spirit pills, which had over a dozen fire element divine vitality pills mixed among them. The dragon Qin was overjoyed and immediately went forward to eat. Qin Mu then saw him picking out fire element divine vitality pills secretly, and sneakily throwing them into the magma river next to him. Qin Mu was furious and shouted, "Mate, this fellow is picky about his food, beat him for me." Long Jianan was furious and knocked Qin Mu down with a punch. She sat down on him and started beating him up. "I have tolerated you long enough. I'll beat you to death." Dragon rearing sovereign flicked with his finger, and smacked Long Jianan away. She crashed into the dragon's scales and vomited blood from the jolt. Dragon rearing sovereign shook his head and said, "You are the master, so how can you get beaten by your maid? What will come next?" Qin Mu crawled up and said with some shame, "I still am on 6 directions realm while she's on 7 stars realm." Dragon sovereign even granted her a dragon bead, so she's filled with brute force now. "I can't defeat her." "So I see." Dragon rearing sovereign took out a dragon bead and threw it to him. He said, "I cannot do anything regarding your cultivation realm, but I have plenty of dragon beads with me. I'll give you an even better one." The dragon bead I gave her is merely a small toy, coming from a mixed blood dragon of Divine Bridge realm. Although this dragon bead is also from Divine Bridge realm beast, its bloodline is much purer and closer to a true dragon. If she wants to beat you again, you can blast her off with one punch. Qin Mu grabbed onto the dragon bead and felt a savage force instantly filling his entire body. His strength increased frantically, and he couldn't help becoming delighted. Long Jianan's expression turned ashen. Was this still her founder? He was siding with an outsider so much that he seemed to be Qin Mu's founder instead. The shenanigan in the dragon's vein has already been discovered by me. Long Jianan picked the golden cauldron with a grim face. This isn't the main dragon's vein, merely a branch of it, having come here to guard the other dragons. On top of that, this main dragon's vein seems to be related to the dragon's veins in Great Ruins. Qin Mu went forward and saw golden dragons swimming around in the magma in the golden cauldron. A bunch of them were surrounding the center where a menacing, huge dragon was coiled upon itself as it slept. The dregs of Great Ruins indeed have exceptionally talented methods. Dragon rearing sovereign sneered. They transferred the fate of Great Ruins over to Eternal Peace Empire, wanting to use the fate of 2 dynasties to give birth to a true dragon lord. He. I shall take away this vein of the true dragon lord, destroying their master plan of tens of thousands of years in one day, and see how they cry to the heaven and earth. Dragon rearing sovereign's spell to calculate the dragon's veins is pretty brilliant. Qin Mu looked at the dragon-shaped chi that was swimming in the golden cauldron. This kind of calculation skill of dragon rearing sovereign seemed to be able to calculate some auspicious mountains and lands. For example, Great White Sword Sect was built on top of the dragon's eyes, and it seemed to be located on an auspicious land. However, according to the picture in Dragon Rearing Sovereign's cauldron, this place wasn't an auspicious land. Instead, it was a land where a group of dragons seized fortune from others to support the true dragon lord. Sects that resided nearby would have most of their fortune seized, causing them to go downhill and wither with every passing day. No wonder Great White Sword Sect had fallen to such a state today, he secretly exclaimed in his heart. Dragon Rearing Sovereign put away the golden cauldron, and Qin Mu immediately returned Dragon Rearing scripture to him. The god shook his head and said, "Take it and study first. As a boy that raises dragons, you need to know the habits of all kinds of dragon well. There are also skills that deal with rearing dragons inside, which you should comprehend carefully. I shall give you 2 days' time, and how much you can comprehend will depend on your comprehension. I will take the book back after 2 days. Long Jianan's expression instantly turned black. Dragon-rearing sovereign didn't know about Qin Mu's terrifying comprehension, but she knew it very well. On the empty island on the East Sea, Dao Master had shown the 14 writings of Dao Sword to Qin Mu for 10 days, and the youth's comprehension of Dao Sword was no inferior to that of Daozi Lin Xian. Even if dragon-rearing scripture was a technique of a god, it wouldn't be more difficult to comprehend that Dao Sword. Probably even easier. Dao Sword involved algebra, so the higher one's attainments in algebra were, the easier it would be to comprehend Dao Sword. However, how hard was algebra? Dragon-rearing scripture was more about raising dragons, controlling, and living together with dragons. The technique inside, Secrets of Dragon Control, was the unique studies of Dragon Rider Sect, which consisted of the technique to molt and rebirth. Even though Dragon Rider Sect was the sect that dragon-rearing sovereign had founded, the complete dragon-rearing scripture was never passed down. Even the sect master had only received an incomplete copy. Yet even so, Dragon Rider Sect was considered an extremely powerful sect. Of course, it couldn't be compared to the 3 big sacred grounds, but it was reputable in the martial world. Otherwise, Emperor Yangfeng would not have let them lead an army by themselves. Eternal Peace Empire originally had a dragon army, and Dragon Rider Sect led it. Even though Dragon-rearing sovereign had founded Dragon Rider Sect, it didn't receive the complete dragon-rearing scripture. Yet Qin Mu, this scum, did. This naturally drove Long Jianan mad. How could it not when dragon-rearing sovereign trusted Qin Mu, because of his honest appearance, while not trusting Long Jianan? She felt helpless. Dragon-rearing sovereign didn't know what was on her mind. In the eyes of a god like him, keeping Qin Mu and Long Jianan by his side was an insignificant thing. It was like carrying 2 ants, and he naturally didn't need to know what those ants were thinking. If it wasn't because Qin Mu was more useful, his attitude toward him wouldn't have been better than that to Long Jianan. This was natural at the height he was standing. He was a god and nothing could threaten him. A small ant like Qin Mu naturally didn't mean anything to him, so there was no need to put it to heart. He only needed it to help him, after which giving the little ant some benefit would make it even more willing to help him. Even if the ant had ill intentions, it could be killed with just a flick of a finger. Besides, from how Qin Mu and Long Jianan looked and handled things, it was obvious that Qin Mu was more reliable. The tiny human had a natural earthy and honest feel to him, so it was obvious that he was more trustworthy than Long Jianan. Dragon-rearing sovereign brought them upstream, and as they walked, they went farther away from the surface. The magma river was originally buried deep underground and spanned over several thousand miles. Upstream was its source, which was dozens of miles underground. After walking for some time, they felt the surroundings becoming warmer. Qin Mu looked down at the river and saw more and more dragon scales on both sides. Besides them, there was also flesh and blood. He saw them growing out from the dragon scales along with long blood vessels. Compared to the huge underground dragon's vein, those blood vessels were as thin as hair, but to Qin Mu, they were passageways that were thicker than a water barrel. The blood vessels stretched in all directions as they followed along the river. There is blood flowing through them. He then discovered that the blood belonged to a true dragon. When the blood flowed, there would be sounds of mercury flowing rapidly. This dragon's vein has grown a heart, said dragon-rearing sovereign suddenly. Qin Mu could also hear a faint beating of a heart. The heartbeat grew louder and louder, until they saw the heart in the center of a magma lake. It was like a mountain, which was hung in the air by numerous thick blood vessels, a good number of which were also rooted in the lake. With the beating of the dragon heart, the magma in the lake would flow backward and circulate through the entire heart, as though it was cleansing it. When the beating stopped for a moment, the magma would fall back into the lake with splashes, waiting for the next time the heartbeat to flow in reverse again. In the surroundings of the magma lake, there were huge chunks of diamonds hanging from the walls, some of which were like stalactites, while others were pillar-shaped crystals. Other than diamonds, there was also gold sand, and chunks of solid gold lying on the ground. Qin Mu and Long Jiaonan were dazzled by that sight. Even though Eternal Peace Empire had mines throughout its land, they had never seen a mine with such fertile mineral resources. With the power of eternal peace, they could never mine to this place. Their gazes were blank. Even though great abundance coins was the currency of Eternal Peace Empire, gold was useful as well. Besides, diamond was an extremely durable material for forging treasures, and numerous eminent monks in Buddhism used them for that exact purpose. Thus, this kind of huge diamonds could be sold for a very high price. If only I could, what a pity, Long Jiaonan thought in her heart. I'm rich. Qin Mu's heart bloomed with joy. After getting rid of Dragon Rearing Sovereign, all this treasure will be mine. If this was anywhere else, I would definitely think that this fire dragon's vein was the main dragon's vein of Eternal Peace Empire. What a pity that this is only a smokescreen designed by those old fogies of great ruins. Dragon Rearing Sovereign paid no attention to the golds and diamonds lying around and sneered. They might be able to deceive others, but they can't deceive me. Since great ruins is involved, the dragon's vein of the true Dragon Lord cannot be so weak and small. He took out his golden cauldron and checked before saying, "There's another dragon's vein nearby." He lifted the golden cauldron up and moved quickly to the front of the magma waterfall. With a smile, he said, "Right here." Dragon Rearing Sovereign raised his hand to lift up the magma waterfall, and saw another magma river on the other side. Man! I still need to cross a few magma dragons' veins to be able to find the one of the true Dragon Lord. Dragon Rearing Sovereign's spirit was roused, and he brought Qin Mu and Long Jiaonan through the waterfall. He said with a smile, "However, this makes it more interesting. This trip down to the mortal world is not in vain." The dragon's vein they were in was also extremely extraordinary, and even of a higher quality than the one earlier. Besides the dragon scales, blood vessels, and vein lines of muscles on the four walls, some places also had organs. If it wasn't for the fire dragon's vein at the side, Qin Mu would have thought he had come inside of a true dragon. If the group of dragons is already like this, then what kind of dragon's vein would the true Dragon Lord be like? Qin Mu was secretly astonished. As they continued down and covered 10,000 miles, they came into contact with the third underground dragon's vein. Qin Mu frowned slightly. They were walking to the west. Volcano County was at the outback of Eternal Peace Empire, the central region. If they headed west and walked such a long distance, they should be very close to God-Broken Mountain Range. Qin Mu didn't know if Dragon Rearing Sovereign was familiar with the geography of Eternal Peace and Great Ruins, but since Heavenly Devil Cult was originally dabbling in the smuggling business, they had to cross God-Broken Mountain Range. Qin Mu had also crossed it before and could determine it was right above them. Meanwhile, the third dragon's vein was still stretching out to the west. If they continued to head in that direction, they would enter Great Ruins. It should still be night time in Great Ruins currently. Qin Mu suppressed the pounding of his heart. Would the underground of Great Ruins be dangerous at night? Would the darkness shroud them as well? He couldn't be sure. However, there was nothing wrong about sticking close to Dragon Rearing Sovereign. The abilities of this god were extremely powerful, and even if the darkness shrouded them, he could protect their lives. They continued forward until the underground dragon's vein in front of them became dim. The place was originally brightly lit by the intense light from the magma, but by then even the light seemed to be consumed by the darkness, leaving only a weak glow. Qin Mu gave the dragon Chilean a kick, and the slow creature came to realization. He immediately came forward and didn't dare to stray far away from Dragon Rearing Sovereign. Long Jianan saw this and instantly understood what it meant. She also came closer to Dragon Rearing Sovereign in a hurry. This woman is very quick-witted. It'd be best for me to get rid of her as soon as possible to prevent meeting with unexpected failure. Qin Mu frowned slightly. They didn't walk far before they saw a god statue erected upright in the center of the magma river. The god statue was giving off a faint glow and driving away the darkness in the surroundings. It's indeed the old fogies of great ruins who had messed around. Dragon Sovereign sneered and continued to walk forward. If I had not come down to check on the dragon's veins of eternal peace empire, I might have just been fooled. He held his aura, not allowing it to leak out as he walked from the stone statue. It seemed that he was afraid of waking it up. This magma river flowed for a long distance, and every section of it would have a stone statue guarding the dragon's vein. It could be said how far they walked when they finally encountered the fourth dragon's vein. It no longer belonged to eternal peace, but was a dragon's vein of great ruins. Upon entering the fourth dragon's vein, Qin Mu calculated and realized that they had already passed by Border Dragon City and disabled Elderly Village. They were getting closer and closer to the outback of great ruins. The speed of the two flood dragons under Dragon Rearing Sovereign's feet was extremely fast. They were countless times faster than the Fat Glutton, which was the Dragon Chileen. A journey that took the Dragon Chileen over a dozen days was covered by the two flood dragons in a day or two. When they came to the fifth dragon's vein, the darkness had already withdrawn and day had arrived. When they reached the sixth dragon's vein, Qin Mu was sure that they were in the underground of Great Ruin's central region. We are close to the dragon's vein of the true Dragon Lord. Dragon Rearing Sovereign's spirit was greatly roused, and he smiled. How's Dragon Rearing Scripture? It's also time for you to return it. Qin Mu handed back Dragon Rearing Scripture respectfully and said, My aptitude is small and I only gained some little understanding. There are still some places that I don't understand. You're honest and sincere, lacking in sly intentions, and not clever enough. There's naturally some places which are harder to understand, Dragon Rearing Sovereign said. As long as you serve my dragons well, I will slowly explain this Dragon Rearing Scripture to you. Qin Mu was overjoyed. Long Jianan saw the expression on his face and wanted to pounce on him and strangle him to death, so he could maintain that honest smile on his face even in his death. We are at the main dragon's vein. Dragon Rearing Sovereign's spirit rose and he smiled. I shall take it away from these old fogies and ruin their grand scheme that had lasted for 10,000 years in one day. Wait a minute, this is... He revealed a puzzled look as he walked out of the sixth dragon's vein. As he looked around, the puzzlement on his face grew even stronger. This video will end here.